Hey, what is up everybody? We're going to Thunder deck. As with the other three deck reviews, we're going to review, look at some value we get out of it, and then upgrade the deck at the end with a few different variations. Let's just jump right into it. You should know the drill by now. We're going to start with that Ascension line. Quacks 2-3 for 1 Thunder. Whenever you cast it, you can return 3 Thunder Spirits from your Underworld to your Spirit deck. It's nice recovery, and it's going to really help you get that Signectric trigger off, which Signectric's a 4-6 for 2. You can reveal 12 Thunder Spirits from your Spirit deck to special send it into an Ohmperial from your hand or deck, which leads into Ohmperial in 8-12, which its attack really is going to be more like 15 to 20 when you cast it. And that's because when this Ohmperial is in play, it gets +1 attack for each Thunder in your Spirit deck. And you get the bonus if you can expend Thunder in order to target and destroy a card on the basically anywhere on the board, including yours if you ever need to. It's really good because that's just a free destruction every turn. It's like a super earthquake or a super thunderstorm. The drawback is the special cast Ohmperial requires you to run almost all Thunder Spirits. You basically need a minimum of 14 Thunder to get Signectric's effects, since 2 of those Thunder are going to be out of your Spirit deck and on Signectric to begin with. So you're looking at closer to probably running 16, 17, 18 Thunder Spirits with a very small splash in an Ohmperial deck. And you'll see in this deck there's very few other non-Thunder cards in the deck, but that's okay because Thunder generally is pretty good. We're going to skip Toxic and Galvenom for a moment because we're going to look at the core package to support Ohmperial, which is more of a support package. So you have Riceros, is a 2-4, and your opponent's Elestrals cannot attack unless they're Thunder Enchanted on the turn that they come into play, which is basically Summoning Sickness. It's a great card to help you get to Signectric turn 2. If you're on the play, you play Riceros first. Unless your opponent has an Earthquake, they're probably not getting over it, or they're also playing Thunder. You have Spark It, which is a great control card. Again, you play that first with like a Zeus. You can just Nexus off the Zeus to Spark It, lug your opponent's hand on turn 1, say, I don't like you having that card, let's get rid of it, and hopefully go from Spark It into Signectric from there. Astrabbit is one of the best cards in the game. It's a 2-5 body, which is a huge defense, and will let you look at 3 cards on top of your deck to help you filter through some stuff and pick one, put them in your hand. Jolton is this deck's secret 5-attack Elestral. It's going to search out your Stadium, which then you can use to enchant out and becomes a 5-3 with the Stadium mount, and it's Thunder Enchanted. So that's the pseudo 5-attack, and it's just nice to have the Stadium when you already have really good defensive bodies. So the core deck strategy is generally going to be playing like Astrabbit or Jolton, maybe Riceros first turn, Spark It possibly if you have Zeus first turn, being defensive, hopefully to play Signectric on turn 2 and get into Ohmperial right away and start popping things. The backup strategy is a little bit more of an aggressive strategy with Toxie and Galvenom. Spark It can kind of be in that aggressive strategy. Boombat, not really super aggressive, but at least clear stuff. Jolton's great in that aggressive strategy. So Toxian is a 4-2. You can burn your opponent for 1 whenever it receives Thunder. And Galvenom's a 6-2 that you can expend 3 Thunder to destroy 2 cards in your opponent, which usually means you're destroying their back row and destroying their Elestral in combat, which is a really good aggressive card. Even though its attack stat's a little low for a 2 cost, it's pretty powerful effect. It is expensive, but it's a very powerful effect to get you in the game. Outside of the element in Elestrals, we have Spinnymph and Warmite. Spinymph's a 1-of, I believe. He's a little... honestly, he's a really weird include. I guess they were looking for some Earth Elestral to put in this deck that's defensive when you can't use a ton of Earth Spirits in the deck because you want to get Ohmperial's effect to trigger to special cast it. So you have 1 Spinnymph, you have 2 Warmite. Warmite's solid. It generally deals with most 1s and 2s in attack position. So Warmite gets a lot of flack for not being super strong, but it does have really good use, especially in the starter decks. Just getting rid of anything that's 7 or higher attack usually. Then we have our 2 Nectar Gods, 1 Ambrosia. Ambrosia, we'd like to have more, but at least we have the Quackles for the Thunder Recovery to hopefully get our Ohmperial triggers off. Circle of Sky as always. Zeus, one of the best Divine Runes, not just because it pairs well with Volt Tempest, but because -3/-3 to opponent's Elestrals, pretty strong, allows you to get over a lot of things early game, and again it combos with Spark It. Got our 2 Stadiums, of course. Thunderbolts of Zeus, not super used in this deck consistently. It is a nice aggressive card with Zeus out and Jolton or Spark It, so it's nice to have. It's just not the core strategy of the deck. Again, the backup strategy of the deck is like an aggro Jolton Galvenom thing. Thunderbolt of Zeus works with that backup strategy well. Couple Thunderstorms to help get that back row removal. Couple Earthquakes, front row removal. And again, with your Ohmperial, if you have basically Ohmperial becomes a Thunderstorm or Earthquake every turn, and then having Thunderstorm and Earthquake in the deck as well. Very nice to pop things. Couple shields, a random Pandora's Box, the only starter deck with a Pandora's Box. I don't hate it, but it's a little bit weird to see a 1 of Pandora's Box in the starter deck. And then we have 15 Zaptors, which is a little low, because again, we need to have at least 14 minimum to cast Ohmperial. So this means if you don't get Ohmperial out in turn 2 or 3 from its special cast, you're going to have to slowly ascend into it, because you're probably going through your Zaptors pretty quick. 3 Terratlas means you only play 1 Earthquake without playing an Ambrosia first. Not the end of the world, you're probably only drawing 1 Earthquake a game anyway. And a couple of Vipyro for your Warmites, chance still at Crackle. So that's the deck. Generally, it's a control deck trying to get Ohmperial out with a backup strategy of playing an aggressive Toxian, Joltin attack thing. The value of this deck, it's okay. So Toxian Galvenom are only in this starter deck. You can't find them in the boxes. So if you want to play a Toxian or Galvenom deck, you're going to need to make sure you get a Thunder starter deck, perhaps 2 if you want 3 copies of each. Rhyceros is a great stall card. It's only a hollow foil in the booster boxes, so although it's not going to be impossible to get from the booster boxes, it is difficult. Getting 2 here is nice. Astrabbit's going to be everywhere, but that's okay because Astrabbit is a great card, so getting the extra Astrabbits, having them, is always nice. You're putting them in, honestly, any deck you have Thunder space in, you're playing Astrabbit, that's nice. Alt-Art Boombat. You only get this art of Boombat in this starter deck, so if you are, like to collect all your arts and stuff, you will want to get this for your Boombat. The rest of the deck is pretty standard. Again, with the Divine Runes, as always, 2 in the starter deck is great because the only other way to get Divine Runes is from the booster box full arts, which are only 1 in 36 packs, and you're probably not even going to pull the Divine Rune that you need. Standard rune package, Circle Sky, not super used in this deck. Pandora's Box is honestly a nice pickup here because it is only found as a hollow in the box, so having an extra Pandora's Box, if you're looking for that as your sideboard, it's one of the best sideboard options against things like Full Tempest. It's great against even like an Ohmperial deck. Just anything like special cast, stops Viserys, stuff like that. It's a great card. It's nice to have it in a non-hollow form, so hopefully it's easy to pick up. Couple Shield's always great. Earthquake is a great removal card. Thunderstorm, not seeing a ton of play, but it's definitely worth using if you're trying to really go for a specific strategy and don't want back row interrupting it. So that's your general value of the deck. So let's now jump over into our various deck upgrades. So starting again with our Thunder ×2. We have basically the same Ohmperial package because it's a nice ratio, 3-2-1. The Toxian we're going to push up to 1. It's a nice early card, nice little early aggro. Keep Galvenom at 2. We don't want too many 2-drops in the deck. Astrabbit at 3 because it's great. Rhyceros I left at 2 because we already have the Astrabbit and such for a defensive option, but you could put Rhyceros up to 3 if you want. I left Sparkit at 2 because also Sparkit's really good on turn 1 with a Zeus. If you don't have that Zeus, it falls a little bit, so you can't always guarantee the Sparkit be worth it. Kept the 2 Boombats for more removal. It's a control deck after all. We have 3 Joltins because finding those stadiums early is nice with Joltin. We could have pushed up Mount Olympus, but I feel pushing up Joltin to have another 5 attacker in the deck early is nice. Pushed up Zeus because it's got great synergy with Sparkit. It's also just generally decent at helping you remove the board when Thunder doesn't really get to 5 attack easily except with Joltin. Thunderstorm ×2, I left that there for just back row removal before you get into Ohmperial. Earthquake pushed up to 3 because we got rid of the fire, we added some earth. We can push up Earthquake to 3 and Tretless at 4 to help those Earthquakes. Couple Shields, couple Ambrosias for more recovery besides the Quackle. 3 Nectar Gods because Nectar Gods is just decent, it's in this deck. And we're running 16 Zaptor and 4 Tretless in this deck. I forgot to put the image on there below. But this is a nice little bit more control focused Ohmperial deck. You still get the Toxian Galvenom backup strategy, but I feel like there's a little bit more focus and a little bit more consistent at getting the Ohmperial play out by putting 16 Zaptor as opposed to 15. You could push this up to potentially maybe 2 Tretless, 18 Zaptor if you want, and just risk not being able to play your second Earthquake if you draw it. That's up to you to decide. Moving on to the starter deck and box combo. The deck is basically the same. We pushed Sparkit up by 1 because we could. We can only keep Toxian at 2. Galvenom's at 2. Otherwise, most of this is the same. We had to push Zeus down 1 because we're not probably getting it in a box. Earthquake we left at 3. Shield we pushed up to 3. We added a Drops of Leaf instead of a Nectar of Gods times 3, because Drops of Leaf still has a cycle back Signetrix and Galvenoms that we can't cast, or Signetrix that no longer are valuable to us because we can't special the Ohmperial late game, and the 16 Zaptors and 4 Terratlas. This is a little bit more control heavy than the Thunder times 2, but they're both pretty similar. The big change is coming in our starter deck times 5, so one of each starter deck, with a caveat. So this isn't exactly a Fire plus Thunder starter deck, but I wanted to highlight this deck because it's a pretty interesting deck archetype you can build with just Thunder and Fire starter decks plus a couple extra cards. So when I say a couple extra cards, you want an extra Toxian with this deck. You want to get some Elechick with this deck. You want to get a third Eruption with this deck. Everything else is in the starter deck. So what is this deck? This is a Fire, Thunder, Burn deck that you can get almost every card for from just combining the Thunder and Fire starter decks, again, minus the cards I just mentioned. So briefly what this deck is trying to do, so you have Toxian and Necra for your early aggressive burn cards, so Necra deals extra burn damage, Toxian burns when it comes into play. You have Blazers for your high end for a possible aggressive finisher late game to mid game, and if your opponent's back row is open, you might as well just pop the Blazers out and just start swinging. Jolton has the ability to go again, search up Mount Olympus in this deck, just like previously, to make it a 5 attack. It also potentially searches up Volcanic Forge if you want Volcanic Forge to go with your Necrofs or such. I have one of each in the deck. You could get rid of Volcanic Forge without too much issue. I just wanted there as an option because we're tutoring them generally, we're not trying to draw them. Elechick we're using to find either Hephaestus or Zeus, so if we use Elechick to find Hephaestus, we're really only enchanting 1, maybe 2 on Hephaestus to find a Hammer or Thunderbolt in that necessary timing. So Elechick is kind of a pseudo spreader here, where we're just using it to search up an artifact for our aggressive game plan. Usually you're going for Thunderbolt to Zeus. If you know your opponent's playing a lot of Lestral removal like Kinleo and Boombats, you might want to search Hammer of Hephaestus and keep Hephaestus at 1 just for the protection. Astrabbit, again, always a great card in Thunder, so early defensive wall, great at searching through cards, finding things that we need. It's a great backup strategy with eruptions that we can try to filter through, find our eruptions that we need. 3 Nectar Gods, 2 Ambrosias, standard stuff. Gorgon's Gaze, because that's in the Fire starter deck, we can use that for protecting our Elestrals and maybe shutting off Elestral effects like Foamy if we're trying to go really aggressive. Couple Thunderbolt to Zeus, because paired with Zeus becomes a really powerful burn card. Even without the Zeus, it's an additional 1. You put on a Necrof, you have a 7 attacker that makes your opponent deal basically expend 2 every time they get destroyed. It's a great combination. 1 Hammer, as I mentioned, just for that tutor off Elechick / Hephaestus if you need it. Couple Zeus, because Zeus is just generally great at reducing defense and attack, so you can swing over things, and it combos with Thunderbolt to Zeus. 3 Shields Achilles, because you can get 3 Shields Achilles pretty easily. 3 Earthquakes for more removal. You know, it's nice to just pop something defensive wall and start swinging it with Toxian and such. And then we have 8 of our Fire and Thunder Spirits and 4 Terratlas. So again, this deck isn't quite our starter deck times 5 that I've been using for my other videos, but I did want to highlight this deck specifically because it looks like a lot of fun. I've tested it a little bit, and I keep coming back to it every so often. It's definitely a deck that's nice to kind of surprise your opponent out of nowhere, because they don't know quite what you're doing when you play a Necrof and a Jolton with the Stadium, or like just Astrabbit, and you can just hold those eruptions. Turn 1, you can get some pretty, or not turn 1, sorry, game 1 of 3 in a best of 3, you can get some pretty surprising wins by just dropping a Toxian and 2 eruptions out of hand, burning for 7 out of nowhere, stuff like that. It's a fun deck like that. Or just, you know, sending to a Blazerous turn 2 because they have some bad draws, have no back row, and just blow things through, do a lot of damage that way. A lot of fun. So that is the Thunder starter deck and the upgrades. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow with the Fire deck next. Have a good one.